Hello everyone and welcome to the Outspoken Market. Leandro Guerra speaking. One of the key questions when we are doing machine learning for trading is what could be an optimized or a very nice workflow so I can execute the tasks that I have to execute and of course seek to be profitable. Now, of course, everything is going to start with your data sources. Without data, there is no data science, there is no machine learning. And then these data sources, they would be open, high, low, close data, the traditional information that we can find in a variety of different websites. Usually they are free. Usually they will be the only ones that you need in order to already do something that can be profitable. And I understand that some people, they might be skeptical about it because they say, look, how can I, with only 4 data points and of course the historical information from it, derive the variables, the attributes for developing the model? Well, if you remember, one of the most basic things that we have in the market, that it's the down theory, that every information that it's already available is inside the price, especially in the closing price. Now, all the rest, yes, they are going to be somehow derivations from it. Of course, if you want or if you need to be a bit more complex, you can think about also fundamental data. So the information from balance sheets and any other type of things from the companies itself. Remember always that the type of data set that you are going to use, of course, it's related to the type of model and to the target that you are trying to predict. You may think as well also about some alternative data sources that would be news, posts on social media like X or other websites like Reddit, for example, and so on. If the information travels fast enough, likely what you have in the alternative data sources, they are going to be reflected already in the price. But you might also be skilled enough in technology information, and you are not just a data scientist, but also a very good programmer, a very good IT guy, and then these fields are going to overlap. But in this case, we are entering a technological war. Here, I'm keeping it simple. I'm speaking about what is the proper flow for machine learning, for trading, without entering in the IT merit of the thing. Otherwise, we get too complex. It has its place. Of course, if you work for an investment fund or for a large organization, these are the things they are going to care about. However, you as a retail trader can have an edge if you follow the things that I'm telling you. Why? Because I do have an edge. I'm pretty sure you can also have an edge as well. Once you define the objective of your model and the data sources that are related to that particular thing, because of course you cannot use data that has nothing to do with the model or with the target of the model that you are trying to build, then we would think, okay, what type of machine learning model am I going to build? Because there might be, there are many of them, like neural networks, logistic regression, decision trees, more sophisticated like deep learning models, and the list is vast. It's very extensive. Now, of course, the first thing is to understand what type of machine learning or actually data mining task you are trying to solve. Are you doing or solving a regression problem? Are you trying to do a classification model? And this will have an impact, of course, with the typology of machine learning model that you are going to use. When developing the model, there are established techniques. I'm not going to debate them. the only thing that I want to warn you, actually, a couple of things that I want to warn you. The first one, never ever try to predict the price. We don't predict prices. This is a terrible mistake that is still to this date people do. If you look to very interesting research papers, very up to date, with very sophisticated mathematics, with, the top of their research fields, somehow yet they are trying to predict the prices, which for me does not make any sense because prices would not have the statistical properties necessary for being predictable. However, there might be different things that you can do in order to adapt this price prediction and make a proxy and then try to get somewhere. But this is a subject for another class. So once you establish if you are doing a regression problem or a classification problem, and then you understand which type of model that you are going to use, then you start building your variables, your attributes for the model. Now, Leandro, before going to the attributes, which model, I mean, shall I use? Let's say I want to do a classification problem. Shall I go with deep learning? Yes, of course, amazing deep learning. No, 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 no. No, 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 you only bad one. You start simple. Start with the logistic regression. If it does not work, then potentially you go to a decision tree based algorithm. I enjoy very much the gradient boosting type of models. Then you may think about neural networks and later deep learning models. Why is that? Your model is as good as your data is, and especially they are as good as your attributes are. If you have a very bad attribute set, you're going to have a very bad model regardless the typology that you have chosen. I mean, this is maybe it's the biggest or the most common mistake that I see my students and other students doing yet today. They think just because the name is nice or because it's more complex that it's fancy, and then simple stuff will never do the job. But let me tell you something, they will do the job. If we pick up one very important field for the financial services industry, that is predicting delinquency, predicting credit risk, about 90% of the models in the world, they are yet logistic regression. There are several reasons for that. One of them is because they work pretty well. Oh, Leandro, but predicting the markets it's much more difficult than predicting credit risk, the default of a company, of an individual. Not necessarily. It can be extremely challenging. So do not underestimate the power of simplicity of the more simple and traditional models. That being said, you're going to think about your attribute set. Do not have any type of prejudice when developing the attributes. Oh, but my attributes they're going to be correlated. There will be collinearity when training the model. Forget about it. Just do stuff. If you have to do 100 attributes, 200 attributes, just do it. Just develop them. Because depending on the type of model, if you went, for example, for the gradient boosting, many things like normality assumptions, distribution assumptions, they don't matter. Sorry. So be free, be without any prejudice, and just starting developing your attributes. Once you are there, testing the model, validating the model, then eventually you get back and try to check if all of these assumptions or conditions they are met and they are fine for your model. Now, another mistake that people make, they think about the so-called cross validation. Yes, people love cross validation. I don't. And then, well, you may be turning off the video right now because this is a crazy guy is speaking that he does not like cross validation. I mean, it works. It's just a tool. However, the best thing that you can have that fits the problem of testing the robustness and testing if your model is not actually overfitting, it's something that it's called bootstrapping. And there is nobody is speaking about bootstrapping. This is a P. Nobody speaks about it. What's the point of the bootstrapping? Let's say you are modeling the S&P 500. Then you get 10 years historical data. You use the first 5 years as the training set. You validate on the following 3 years, and then you go to a test in the last 2. Then you did the cross validation. You did walk forward analysis as well, is another thing that people love. And then everything goes well. And then you say, okay, my model is great. I'm going to production. I'm going to real life testing. Likely they are gonna fail. Why? You have not done the most important simple test that you could have done. That is the bootstrapping. That is shuffling the order or changing the windows of your data set, applying the model and checking how much deviation you have from the evaluation metrics from the original training set on which the model has been trained. If your deviation is higher than 10% of the average, your model is not robust, your model is going to fail. And that deviation will not be perceived by the traditional techniques like the walk forward analysis or the cross validation. You must think about the bootstrapping, otherwise you are going to fail. I speak without any I speak without having any kind of concerns or without being afraid to tell you the truth that you are gonna fail if you don't test, if you don't do the bootstrapping. Because the market is not linear. The market does not care about your past data for what is happening today. A tweet nowadays changes the world. If your model is following a very boxed structure, anything different that happens is going to make your model to fail. I cannot stress this enough for you to understand this point. Now, if your attributes are good, then they will handle this kind of natural issues that we have in a daily basis. Of course, there will be deviation, but if the deviation is not big enough, you have a very acceptable model. So think always about bootstrapping. Forget cross-validation, forget walk forward analysis. As I said, not because they are bad tools, but because for our trading purposes, they don't work and will never do. If they do, lucky. Brutally honest, that is the truth. Okay, I have developed my model. I did the bootstrapping, Leandro. My model works. My model is fine. Then you go to production. The production environment could be your laptop. you could host eventually something on AWS, in Azure, or in Google Cloud, whatever the provider. They are just other set of tools. Now, what is the most important thing when you are in production? Because remember, I'm not here to speak about the obvious stuff. Of course, if you're using your local computer, there will be implications, pros and cons. If you're working with Azure or AWS or GCP, I mean, you will have pros and cons all the time. I'm telling you what people don't tell you. That is, when you are in production, regardless where your model is implemented, you need to do monitoring of your model. You need to have a constant evaluation of it. And how? Well, you have your evaluation metric from the development period, right? So every new prediction that you do when you are in production, you are going to store. And then you're going to check. I was right, I was wrong, how much percentage or how many percentages of the time I was right or wrong. Then I would check how this is going to fluctuate around the evaluation metric over time. So I will be here, eventually I'll be down here, and then what is expected is that my model performance fluctuates, orbits the expected evaluation metric that we have used. Now, eventually, your model, when in production, may start to be down and could be something, okay, it fluctuates, that it's fine, I'm gonna wait. And then it never comes back. And then you can check that it has established a new mean that it's below the expected one. Then it's going to be the time for calibrating or redevelop develop the model. So you must establish a trigger, a cutoff point that if you stay some X amount of time behind that cutoff or in between this cutoff point and the expected metric that you had in the development period, then you trigger the calibration or you trigger the redeveloping of the model. And this is continuous work. So if you do predictions in a daily basis or eventually on a weekly basis, you can already understand that your effort for monitoring and evaluation is gonna vary. If you do intraday trading, well, you have a much higher effort for monitoring and evaluation. That it's up to you, and of course, this is linked to the objective or the target that you had for your model. And this process, it's continuous. While you have your model in production, you must do it. Failing this process means failing your model. And not because you or yourself has failed, but because you do not control market conditions. And the market conditions, they will change. We don't know when. That's why our model must be robust. We must do the bootstrapping. But when they do, and then even our best tools to try to understand the robustness of the model, they are not going to work because the conditions are so different. The flow of data coming into your FFX, that is your machine learning model, they are going to be so different that the model does not know what to predict. Or, of course, it's always going to predict something because it's just a formula, it's a function, but will give you wrong things. I understand that it may sound, maybe, if it's the first time that you're seeing this, a little bit complex. But I do believe that you got the main points that I want to share with you. I'm not speaking about what model should you choose, which are the best data sources, where you should implement your model. No, no, no. I mean, this is fine, whatever. The point is good data, good attributes, start simple, do complex stuff later. Don't think about cross validation, don't think about walk forward analysis. The markets, they are not time series. I know you are not prepared for that conversation yet, but you will be. Because of that, do your bootstrapping. Think carefully when you are in production, regardless where you are in the monitoring and the evaluation. Establish the triggers, your cutoff point for calibration or redevelopment, and just remember, the more frequent you do predictions, more frequent you must do the monitoring and evaluation, and faster your conditions are likely to change, and then you need to do the entire process again and get back to the beginning. I hope that you have enjoyed this class. Thank you so much for being here. Leave your comment, any questions, suggestions, other things that you want to see. That will be my pleasure to teach you. And see you next time. Bye bye.